the the thing that I learned from having the Olympics be boycotted was a painful uh, lesson. I guess I'll call it a lesson. Anytime you go through the fire, if you make it through the fire, you're going to be a different person, hopefully a better person. What I mean by all that is, I can honestly say that the Olympic boycott is that I experienced made me a better person.
I don't want you to waste this on me and Rick. We want to get this recorded.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I see Rick is already started the film, so I'm going to introduce the show. You
Yeah.
sound like you're ready to roll. Welcome to another episode of Leadership and Character Development with the Greco-Roman national team, and I've got Rick Adante, and today we got a really special guest, Lee Kemp. Lee was an American freestyle wrestler who's had unparalleled success. I mean, started in the ninth grade, Rick. By his sophomore year in high school, uh, he was starting to figure out the sport after 2 years of wrestling. He was winning state titles and winning junior national titles, beating Division I national champions by the time he was a senior in high school. He was the wrestler of the decade in the 70s, winning 3 world championships on his way to making the Olympic team in 1980. And then the big boycott happened. And we're dealing with some of that stuff right now with the Olympics being postponed, pushed back a year, but certainly not boycotted. So it's a very unique story. Lee was on his way to winning 4 NCAA titles, got beat his freshman year, and came back and went undefeated for the next 3 years. He's a speaker, an author, and there's recently a new movie about him, Wrestled Away, which you recommended to me, and thank you very much. And Lee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's always nice to connect back to you, Matt. I mean, we've got some history together, although our eras were different, but still, it's nice to see what you're doing with wrestling.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of our athletes study the history of our sport like they did in the past, and we talked about that a little bit offline. And I mean, a legend in our sport. And I don't think you've gotten your due just because of those Olympics being canceled. But this show's about leadership and character development. We started this because a couple of my athletes were saying that they weren't getting enough leadership training. And I think what it was they weren't recognizing what leadership training looks like. So I said, you know what, we'll do a podcast. We'll start a show. We're on episode 22 now. And we're trying to just give information to athletes so they can be better leaders and winners. And you know what that takes to be a leader, and you know what it takes to be a winner. And leaders as well as winners are a rare breed. And that's a quote from you, Lee. And the ability to communicate what it takes to be a winner and a leader is a rare talent. And you have that talent. And we'd like to hear kind of your thoughts as guys are isolated right now and uncertainty about the Olympic Games going on. And I'd love to hear your story from you if you'd share that with us.
Well, I can start by kind of just conveying a little bit of my thought process when I started wrestling. First of all, you've got to have something that you can become passionate about, and that's difficult sometimes because as a coach, you're coaching everybody, and you're coaching the ones that want to be champions, and you're coaching people who may just be happy to be part of the team, and and everybody in between, and they're all part of the team. So as a coach, it's very difficult to relate to each person's level of desire. Now, in my case, I set really, really high goals, and I wanted to be like Dan Gable. I'm from that era when people from the 60s and 70s all looked up to Dan Gable. He was the guy who was breaking all the barriers. He was beating the Russians. He was winning the world championships, and then he won an Olympic gold medal, which was rare for the United States. So there isn't a wrestler anywhere around my age that doesn't say that Dan Gable influenced their career, because he did. When I was a sophomore in high school, That was 1972. That was the year Dan won the Olympic gold medal. Everybody in the wrestling world in the United States was looking at Dan Gable, what he was trying to accomplish. So I had the opportunity to with be a camper at one of the camps he was teaching at prior to him going over to Munich to win his gold medal. So I saw firsthand what it was like to see a champion train and some of his mindset. It was the thing about the camp too. It was a camp where we stayed in cabins, so it was a real close knit type of thing. We were in this like campground, so we couldn't go off campus, so to speak, like kids do now if they're staying in a college dormitory. So we were secluded in this campground, staying in cabins, and Dan was staying in a cabin as well. So you got to see the personal life of Dan, and the Peterson brothers were there, Ben and John Peterson, and that probably had more to do with me learning how to be a champion than him actually watching him train, because I got to see him offline, so to speak. I got to see how he was, when he wasn't training, and that's important to see his character. I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad to swear and be rowdy and drink and all that stuff, but Dan, it was very clear he didn't do any of those things. His language was pretty clean. Not again, I'm not saying it's wrong to swear or anything like that, but he was pretty focused guy. And even when it was, when we ate in the cafeteria, I would sit and watch him. He ate clean. He was focused. So I just started to draw upon those character qualities I saw in him, and then to add to that what I saw when he was on the mat. So he taught us technique, and then later when the session was over, he'd go train to get his workout in. And when all the campers would go to lunch, just say, or dinner or whatever, Dan used that time to go train. And so I didn't care about dinner, and I didn't care about lunch or breakfast. I wanted to sit and watch to see what he was doing. So I was maybe one of maybe two people who would just sit and just watch him work out, And in the mornings, I noticed he would get up and run. And because of that, I would get up early, real early, and I would just go watch him leave his cabin to go run. And I wasn't, my mindset wasn't there at that point, but I was watching him do it. So when I went back home after that camp, I started to emulate what I saw him doing. So the thing that allowed me to learn leadership came from, and if you call that leadership, I guess my success wasn't necessarily leadership, but the example that Dan provided and I copied allowed me to have similar success. So when you're trying to translate this into a leader, I think the leaders have to show by example. Not that you've got to go run, lift, and all that kind of stuff, but you have to be present. You have to be there. You can't, like for instance, I've heard stories of coaches who would sleep in. They would just tell their athletes to go run in the morning, and they'd sleep in, and then at 10 o'clock at breakfast, they go check in to see how many of their athletes would run. I'm not saying that you've got to get up and go run with your athletes, but at least be there. At least be at the checkpoints. At least, but in my case, Dan was a young athlete, and he ran with it. Now, that's another step, another level of it. Dan did all the training with me, and not me as an individual, but when I made my first world team in 1978, Dan was still in that mindset where he would work out quite a bit. He was the coach of the 1978 world team, and I mean, he ran with us, he trained with us, he worked out with us, and Dan was my workout partner. I considered him my workout partner in 1978. He was still training at a high level then, still intense. Nobody wanted to work out with him because he was so intense. In fact, his workouts, if you worked out with Dan, it really wasn't a workout. He would smash you and not let you go, basically. And he would just beat on you so bad that most of the wrestlers didn't feel like you got any benefit out of it. So my goal was to compete with him and not let him do those things to me. And he got the better of me. Even though I did beat him in that one match, you can beat Dan if there's a time limit. If you just happen to be ahead when the time of the match is over. But if you're in a 2-hour practice, man, you do not get away and beat Dan Gable. And, in 1978, he was still a relatively young guy, 30-ish, and still liked to train quite a bit. And so I set that as my standard. I felt like if I could go with him and train as hard as he trained and do everything he asked us to do at a high level to where I could tell he was satisfied with my effort and practices. You could tell if someone is pleased with how you're doing. Whether it's school, you can tell if the teacher, not the teacher's pet, so to speak, but you can tell if you're doing things that the teacher thinks is right in line with what they want. I felt that was the case with me and Dan, that first training camp I was at. And the results were that I was able to win a world championship that year. And that only came because of the standard that he set. Now, was he a vocal leader? No. If anyone who knows Dan, I mean, he's later learned to be more vocal, obviously being a coach and all that kind of stuff. But in those early days, he was real quiet. He didn't say anything. He just led by example. And his way of showing was getting on and doing it. And that's probably why he has 2 artificial hips now and 2 artificial knees, and he can barely move hardly. But because he put himself out there and he showed by example. And Matt, you're from the old school. I can tell. I grew up in an environment. My dad was old school, and he could do anything, man, from farming to butchering animals. He could do plumbing work, carpentry work. He could do it all by example. He could show you that he could do it, and that's how I was raised. I was raised by a man who could do everything, and he could do it all at a very high level. And if I didn't do it, if I didn't do what he asked me to do well on the farm, he'd make me do it over. If I didn't do it well enough the second time, he'd make me do it over. And I came to the realization very quickly that if I didn't, buckle down and get this job done right the first time, that I was going to be out here quite a bit longer than I really wanted to, doing it over and over and over again. So I think my dad was a leader too, but was he very vocal? No, he did it by example. So when I started to understand what it took to win, I was all in. And that's why I had success so quickly, because once I figured it out, I felt like, why wait? And too many athletes today, they feel like they have to kind of wait their turn. It's almost like waiting in line, when you're going to a movie or something, the line's long. If you're a celebrity, you walk to the front, right? Because you feel like you have that privilege. Well, I felt like I didn't have to wait in my place in line. Even though I just started wrestling, I wanted to be a state champion anyway. So I tried hard to win. And the thing that Dan said to me not too long ago, maybe 5 years ago, 6 or 7, whatever, 7, 8 years ago, he agreed, which I was really happy he agreed to provide an interview for my documentary. One thing he said to me was profound in my mind and I tell this to people that I talk to. Dan told me, he said, Lee, it never occurred to me that you would actually try to beat me. And just think about that. I was 18 years old. I was I was nowhere near at his level in terms of knowledge and experience and all that. Call it naivety or stupidity or whatever. And sometimes when I hear someone talking like that, my first thought is, oh, that person's being like unrealistic. But then I pull myself back and say, wait a minute now. I'm just going to shut up, because that's how I was. I mean, I was naive enough to think that I had a chance to beat Dan Gable. And Dan didn't even think that anyone could beat him. I mean, he just said, it never occurred to me that you would actually try to beat me. And it never, like the match against Larry Owens, that match has been circulated around so much now. And there's a lot of footage in archives and interviews that are surfacing that we've never seen before. But that was what was going on during that time. Dan couldn't believe that this guy thought he could beat him. And Larry Owens publicly said it in the media and everything. It was almost like Muhammad Ali and that whole thing with Sonny Liston. He was acting and saying things that were so preposterous that they were beyond belief, really. And that puts anyone into a place of like doubt. People like, dealing with people who have some sanity about themselves. If you seem to be crazy, no one likes crazy. And if you're Larry Owens and you're publicly stating to the media that you cut down a weight, you went to the tournament to beat Dan Gable, when you're saying it to the media, which he did, and that wasn't brought out right away. I mean, that has surfaced through the advent of media surfacing and interviews surfacing and things like that. Well, me wrestling Dan Gable when I was a sophomore in college at 18 years old, and we touched right after the initial bell. Dan probably thought, "What the heck is this guy? This guy's actually trying to beat me," And the match went on that way, and then it's in his mind years later. So just 5-6 years later, he said that to me. The thought never occurred. Now, if we would have wrestled a second match an hour later, it might have been altogether different, because then he would have been mentally ready and prepared that this guy is going to come out here and try to beat me here. So that was my mindset my whole career. And when I won the state tournament, only after 1 year of varsity experience and only 2 years of total wrestling experience, to be an Ohio State champion after 2 years seems impossible, really. And to beat the defending state champion at that seems impossible, really. But there is a certain bit of crazy in people that want to do things that don't seem realistic. You can find it in every area of life, every discipline of life, inventions, people in business, people who create companies, people who do all these great things, athletes who want to, Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile. I tried to bring some of those things into the book that I wrote, that I just tried to put a collection of things together to make people understand that they could achieve more than what they ever thought they could have. And that was something that resonated with me when I found wrestling. And it was a blessing. I think it was a divine thing that allowed me to find wrestling. It allowed me to find something I could be passionate about, something that was honest. When I mean honest is, you can't cheat wrestling, as you know, Matt. You can't cheat it. You kind of get out what you put in. I'm sure there's some bad breaks and things like that, but for the most part, we're all blessed with a certain amount of athletic ability. We're blessed with a certain amount of ability to handle pressure and all that kind of stuff. So once you put all that aside, hard work is going to take everybody to the highest levels that they can get to. Because, talent doesn't get you all the way there. Gable has proven by his ability to coach all those years and have all those national championships, he didn't have the most talented athletes all the time. But that work ethic and the way that those athletes train, that would sometimes trump the guys who had all the athletic ability. So once I learned that, then, I was blessed with, thank God I was blessed with a lot of athletic ability too, and blessed with the ability to handle pressure, I guess. Some of that is not easy for people to do. And I think maybe I'm not sure why I was able to handle pressure at a young age and to perform even though there was a lot of pressure. But even still, the hard work is what takes you to the next level. So as a leader, it requires you to put yourself out there, though. And the best leaders are the ones that could do it all. The best CEOs that I've met, and they're the old school ones, like from my era, people around my age now. They're the ones that could do it all. They're the ones that started at the bottom, worked their way up to the top of the corporation or company or whatever it was, and then they were running it because they could do everyone's job in the whole place. We have people now who gain a level of success just through their position in life, or maybe the title that they hold ushers them into that place of authority. And I'm not saying people like that can't be good at what they do, but the ones that to me are the best are the ones that could do it all, the ones that could show you. And I learned that from my dad from day one. When he would complain about me not doing a good job when I was maybe trying to plow one of the rows, and it was crooked with our tractor. My dad would be like, Lee, blah, blah, and he'd tell me to get down off the tractor. He'd jump up there and he would do it perfect, you know. I mean, if it didn't matter what it was, he could do it. I mean, I saw him butcher one of our hogs once. I mean, think about that. I was born in Cleveland, then was adopted. You know, my story starts early, but then once I was in the Kemp family, you know, in junior high, we moved to this farm, you know, and I never knew my dad could do all that, but we had cows and pigs and chickens. And one day my dad butchered one of our pigs, man. You know, he just knew how to do all that stuff just from growing up in the South. You know, I mean, one day we were out, you know, he shot, you know, we had a lot of land, 25 acres of land, and he was teaching me how to shoot, you know, a 22. And he said, see that tree way down there? And I said, yeah. He says, okay, I'm going to see if you can hit it. Of course, I shot and didn't hit it. He took the gun and bam, took a shot. And we walked down there, and there, sure enough, there was that bullet right in the center of the tree. And my dad could do it all. So he was a guy that led by example. Now, everyone can't do that, but I was around people and I was shaped that way. And that's how I became a champion, by being people that could actually do it.
Sounds great. I mean, you were very blessed to have a father in your life. I mean, there's a lot of young men these days that don't have that role model, that male father figure in their life to give them directions. And what advice would you give like a young man that didn't grow up with a dad but has the same aspirations and goals as you did, going forward?
That's an awesome question, and it's especially meaningful to me because I was given up right at birth by a single mom who had a child at the time that I was born, and she was still a teenager when I was born. So it was a divine blessing that I was given up at birth. She never knew. Well, I guess she didn't know who my dad was, but obviously they weren't together, and so I would have grown up without a father, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And my life would have been, I think, very, very different than how it actually turned out. To add to that, I would say that we all have a responsibility to give back, to pay it forward, even in situations where there is no father present. I think each male, each has a responsibility, all of us, to give back and to be that role model for that young man that doesn't have one. Kenny Mallory is a wrestler from around my era. I mean, he didn't have a male figure in his life, but Jim Peckham, he talks about Jim Peckham, and you probably know who Jim Peckham is.
I know Jim.
Jim took Kenny Mallory and was that father figure for him, and really got him into wrestling. I can think of examples in the Chicago area, you know, the Beat the Streets and all those programs that have been created, but some of those original ones. Mike Powell from Illinois, he talks about situations where at Oak Park, where he would actually go into some of these really bad neighborhoods in Chicago and get some of these athletes to practice. I'm trying to think of the wrestler's name. You may think of it before I do, but he ended up being a national champion in college. But when he was in high school, I mean, if he didn't come to practice, it's because he couldn't get to practice. So the coach realized that, and he'd go pick him up. There's this white coach going to this black neighborhood, this gang-infested type of neighborhood, to pick this kid up because he felt a responsibility to help this guy. A good friend of mine, Kevin Dunn, he happens to be white, but I only say that because he adopted some black kids in his life that went on to be a great wrestler. And how many people would actually do that, to take someone into your family that you really don't know that well, but you do it because you know these kids have potential and they need it. So those situations are ones that each and every male listening to this broadcast can do that, and we can reach out to a young man, and it's not just men; it's young ladies too. There are a lot of role models that are available, like in churches. Think of the male role models that are in churches. I think, but we all have to get out of our comfort zone to do that. And and my career took off when I went to Chardon. That's another thing. My documentary points this out. My mom and dad, who were black, they wanted a better life, so we moved from Cleveland during the '60s, and there was a lot of unrest in every major city in America during that time, whether it was Cleveland, Detroit, LA, whatever it was. So they moved to a community that was a lot safer, first of all, but where I really grew and developed as a person. And there were certain people in my life when I was in Chardon that helped me, like John Grantham, who was brought out in my documentary. He was instrumental in me going to the University of Wisconsin. And he had 5 of his own children. He treated me like one of his own kids. I mean, he was just one of these type of guys, men who paid it forward. He was a very successful businessman in Chardon. And, he had a brother actually that went to the University of Wisconsin on a football scholarship back then during the '60s. And he thought it was important to help me. And he was the sole reason why I even went on the recruiting trip to Wisconsin. So I think in those situations where, young men don't have fathers, maybe, and this will be very hard, but maybe they have to seek out a mentor sometimes. And that's always harder doing it that way. It's better if the adult can seek out the younger person and try to help them. But sometimes that situation might not be present. So in the case of maybe like I'm trying to think of Kenny Mallory's situation. I'm not sure if Jim Peckham just saw how talented he was as an athlete and said, "Hey, I think you'd be a good wrestler." But it took Kenny, it took him to have the initiative to maybe take that first step, maybe to go to a wrestling practice, maybe to try something different that he had never done before. But I think to have success, you can't just accept, or when you're starting out and you want to have success, I don't think it's okay to just say, I'm just going to like sit here and not do anything. I think you have to put yourself out there a little bit. You have to try things, and you have to give it your best effort. And when you do that, you could gain the attention of someone who could come in and help you go to the next level. And coaches do that all the time. I mean, think about other coaches that have recruited athletes right out of the cafeteria because they see them in gym class, or they know that they might be a little bit tough. Or I've known coaches who recruited athletes to wrestle because these kids were heading down a bad path. They were going to get in trouble. And they did it only because they felt that the young man needed to be involved in something. At least for those 2 hours of the day you're in practice, I have some eyeballs on you and I can kind of help you. That's where a lot of wrestling careers have started, where somebody has went out and took it upon themselves to just make someone do something because they feel like at least I have a hold of them for this time period. I've known coaches that have had athletes come live with them because their home environment was so bad. I mean, we all can think of a lot of different scenarios where paying it forward has made an incredible difference in someone's life.
I mean, that's something that I think is so special about the wrestling community and the wrestling as a sport, is that I think it distinguishes itself from lots of other sports, in particular based upon that mentoring model that probably goes back thousands of years. But that transmission of knowledge, not just on the mat, from sort of old lion to young lion, but off the mat, helps to build the young boys into men and the young men into champions. And we've seen it. I mean, I was a kid that was mentored like that too, and I had a stepfather that filled in where my dad was gone. And we watched a show the other night, actually just about the biblical figure of Joseph and the role that that stepfatherhood can be so important to people who don't have it. And that mentoring is something that the wrestling community is extraordinarily well known for. Like you said, we all probably know guys who take people into their home, and I've seen Matt give the shoes off of his feet to an athlete who needs to run or work out. And we had high school coaches in Jersey, Tabachino would take guys in, and he would take them in, and they'd live in his house. and they were troubled kids, and it changed their lives. And, you know, without the medals, without anything else, there's lives being changed because of the leadership shown by the senior mentors in the field. It's profound.
And that's hard to do, by the way, too. And I've heard that about you, Matt, as well. Schultz was that way. Schultz is from my era, Dave Schultz. He was that way. I mean, the guy literally would give you the shirt off his back, and he would go shirtless for a while. That's just the way he was. I mean,
I got to know Dave over the years, and just like you were kind of inspired by Gable, my first clinic was actually with Mark Schultz, and I thought the guy was an absolute lunatic. I was like, this guy is insane. I mean, he was talking to, you know, I was a freshman in high school, and I just discovered this sport. I did it in gym class, and the coach was like, "Oh man, you're going to be pretty good at this. You should join the team." And I'm sure he was lying, but he got me out. He got me out to do the sport and participate. And you know, I really something drew me to it. I didn't want to get bullied anymore. I didn't want to, you know, be a victim, and so I kind of took to wrestling in that sense. And then, you know, my first national title was won on the same mat that Dave Schultz was wrestling on in the background. And then I got to know Dave, and every year when Foxcatcher was take a trip to France, there was 3 Greco weights, and I got to be chosen for those Greco spots when they went over there and took the team. And I got to know Dave pretty well. And you're right. Everybody needs that mentor, somebody that they can identify with. And, you know, when I never knew Rick Sanders, and if you did, I want to hear some stories, because he's buried in my hometown. I'm from Portland area. I lived rural like you did. But I was, you know, 40 minutes from Portland, and I would literally take 2 city buses to get to the wrestling club, because that's what I wanted to do. And made a lot of sacrifices to do that, because I knew this is what it was going to take to get to that next level. And I mean, a lot of similarities, you know, in our stories. But when I started wrestling, I mean, there was guys like Anthony Amato and Mark Fuller, and that were in my practice room, and I could see these guys we're the same. I mean, we're training together in the same room and same environment. Why can't I be on an Olympic team like these guys? Why can't I accomplish those type of things? And how important is that, to surround yourself with the right kind of people and different types of people, and just who your relationships are with? How important is that to success?
that is like vitally important. I just think that without it, I think it would be very difficult to have high levels of success. If you're the best person in your environment, you've got to find a different environment. And I kept finding new environments where I could grow in. But first, you start where you're at. And when I was first starting to wrestle, I gravitated to the best people in my room. When I was a 10th grade, first year varsity, I had as many wins as losses as you might imagine. My very first year wrestling, but I started to associate with the better wrestlers in our room, and I got to be the best guy in my room. And then my coach allowed me to go to other high schools to train when I was in high school, which might be a little unusual, but that's just the way I thought back then. And you might know the name Mike Deanna. I mean, he wrestled at Iowa around my age. He's a little bit, I mean, younger wrestlers wouldn't know him, but Mike was, I mean, he was one of the best wrestlers to ever come out of Ohio. And I was 2 years older than him. So when I was a senior, Mike was a sophomore in high school, but he was the best guy in the state as a sophomore. And we were in 2 different classes, which made it good. So my senior year, in order to, in my mind, work out with someone that could push me, I wanted to work with Mike Deanna. And he was in the Cleveland schools, and I was in Chardon. That was a 40-minute drive away. Guess who went to each other's school? I mean, do you think he drove up to Chardon to wrestle with me, or I went down there to train with him? And I guess my point is I was the one who made the sacrifice. Not that he wouldn't have done that as well, but it was me that initiated it. It was me that arranged it. ask my coach, ask his coach, talk to him. Before cell phones, before the internet, you actually had to pick up an actual landline and talk to people. You actually had to get in the car and drive. Mike Dannon's dad was a coach when he was young in a Y program there. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is you connect with people if you want to be good. I remember this YMCA, East Cleveland Y, is where we meaning the best wrestlers would come and train. I come from north, like in the country, from Chardon down to the East Cleveland Y, and Mike Deanna would come from Bay Village, and the cars would come there sometimes, like Joe Carr, Jimmy Carr, come from Erie, Pennsylvania, about 70 miles away. So I talk to athletes today about clubs like, why don't you go to that club, that really good club that's not by you? Oh, well, they come up with some excuse. Like, why don't you do that? Now, money could be a factor, but typically, I don't know of any club coach that would not let a wrestler come for money. I just have never seen that. They'll have the wrestler clean the mats, or if there's someone that's that zealous to get in that room, I've not seen a coach shut that young man or young lady out. So anyway, I arranged these ways that Mike Deanna and I could train together in high school, and he won the state at the AAA schools. I won the state at AA. But I feel like that helped me stay strong, because I had gotten way past being the best guy in my room. I just needed somebody to train. And Mike and I would go, we'd go toe to toe, and I think he enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. He looked forward to that one day a week I come down there. So yeah, it's important to have in your environment just the level of competition that's going to push everybody up. That's what Gable created when Iowa started having that great meteoric success. That room was incredibly competitive. And I remember going there early in my, when I was training for the 84 Olympic team. I went there to train at Iowa just so I could be around that environment. And Royce Algiers was a freshman then. And he was good coming out of high school, but that room, man, was tough. And maybe it might be good to have him on your show to have him talk about that. But what I witnessed with my own eyes was him just like getting, just having a tough time. Just being a freshman, having a tough time in that room. Guys like Bannock to go with, Chris Campbell. I mean, that's the kind of people he was training with. And it was very difficult for him. And I can remember one time in particular, he was just so frustrated because he was just getting smashed. And he left the room, and Dan followed him outside, and I heard them yelling, not talking, yelling. Dan was trying to get Royce to just understand that, hey man, this is what it means to be tough. And he's like, Coach, those guys, he just kept telling him, get back in there, just pushing him, tough love. He was forcing him and pushing him and pushing him to a place, like pushing him back into the fire. The athlete comes on and says, man, I don't want to be in the fire anymore. Get burned. And your coach, you think he's going to hug you, but he punches you in the chest and pushes you back in the fire. So the room makes a guy like Royce Alger, a two-time national champion, beating some really tough guys, beating an Olympic champion and Kevin Jackson, being an Olympic silver medal or world silver medalist himself. A match he was winning, but he got scored on toward the end to lose his gold medal. But it took all that to get him there. And how many people would want to be in the fire like that? It's not many. I mean, but there are people that really want that kind of success. And I guess to the people listening to this podcast, be prepared to go through some fire if you want to be at the highest level.
I think that's really important, Lee, because I think that a lot of people, so we hear stories like that all the time from in all sorts of domains of life, but wrestling in particular. And I don't know that a lot of people hear that very frequently, though, by getting the honor of speaking to guys like you and Matt and your caliber of your circle of people. of champions, because every champion seems to have a story like that, and knowing other champions who've struggled like that. And I think a lot of people, they have experiences of those struggles, those early in struggles, or the mid-level, or even the high-level struggles, and they think that it's just them, and they don't think, well, the champions, they've got some other nice path, and the good guys, they have that talent, and it's easy to fall into that trap, because I think it's a perceptual trap, right? But a lot of people, I think, quit or throttle back or walk away because they don't get that message that you shared about that this is that forging in the kiln. This is actually a normal process, and if you want to get to that top, you have to go down first. That's where the staircase goes down before it goes up, and they get dissuaded. They get down on themselves, and they leave, and they say, oh well, I had a bad year or two, like, man, I can never get to that top, because they don't hear the realities from guys like you guys. You can say, no, like, if you're struggling, it means you're on the right road. That means you're in the spot. You're right now in someone's footsteps, in someone's shoes that got to the top, and they don't know that.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. These stories need to be told. People need to see that life's not always promised either. Which I think the current topic, as you started out in the broadcast, is the Olympic Games being postponed. In my case, it was boycotted. Who knows? It could still be boycotted here. But even in situations like that, when through no fault of my own or any of the athletes, the 400 plus American athletes and all the other athletes who who went through the boycott as well, through no fault of their own, they had to deal with that situation. Just like an unfortunate thing if someone dies in life, or, whatever, if you're divorced, so you get sick. If you still have life and breath, you still have a chance to be productive. And I've met people who have gone through some things that are pretty devastating, where to us who still are blessed to have our health and all of our faculties, we see someone that has seemingly almost nothing, but they still can smile. They still can be productive in the way that they can be productive. And man, that kind of touches my heart. It's like, wow, would I be strong enough to deal with the situation that this guy had? I mean, you take Anthony Robles. I mean, can you imagine his mom? And that's an awesome story. How she just wanted her son to feel as normal as he could, so she wanted him to do sport. And it took a wrestling coach to take him in. That just is the beauty of wrestling. I mean, and obviously with Anthony and using him as an example, the way he was, it would have been very difficult to be in any other sports. But even still, at a very young level, like even some coach could have had him on the team at least just so he could be involved. Those other coaches just said, no, there's no way. The wrestling coach took him in. And even still, he didn't know what to do with him. He thought, well, how is he going to be able to even do anything? And here the guy becomes a national champion. So how many stories do we see like that? Like Kyle Maynard, which I think you know, Matt. I mean, I met him once and it just blew me away. The positive joy that he exuded. I was just stunned when I was sitting at his table at this banquet he was at. I was just stunned. I'd never been around someone like that. And I learned so much from just that, sitting there for that hour, talking to him, trying to get to know him a little bit. Look at the hand he was dealt, but he's having a very productive life. So no matter where you're at, from that point, you can make a decision to be productive with whatever you have. Now, that's easier said than done, obviously. None of us want to have hardships, certainly not ones that take everything away from us, but that's possible, right? I mean, that could happen to any one of us. So we have to live our lives in such a way that that we realize that life is not about possessions and things and notoriety and all that, and just how popular you are and that. It's about what you have inside. It's about what you can contribute. And sometimes what you can contribute today is not the same thing that you can contribute tomorrow. So
would you say that's part of character development? Would you say that that's what that is developing that character inside? And how important is to have faith and your faith to go through those struggles and trials? Because like today, it just feels like life is so easy. I mean, you grew up, you guys slaughtered your own hogs. So did we. We slaughtered cows, and getting our food was not easy. Now I just go on my computer and Amazon, order this, order that. It comes at my house. I mean, we can get meals delivered to our house. I don't know how good they are for you. But I do know that, if I raise my own beef or my own hogs and, my own vegetables, I am going to be eating healthier, but that is not easy. You've done that. I've done that, but everything is easy now. And it's almost like we expect things to be easy. You know what I'm saying? And when things get hard, it's like, this is crazy. This shouldn't be like this, but I almost feel like it's the opposite. We should have more struggle.
Well, as a parent, I think we all can relate to this. I can remember my son was in high school, and he would get up late. He'd miss his bus, and I'd take him to school and all that stuff. And, as a parent, Matt, would your dad have taken you to school if you'd have missed the bus? My dad would have looked at me like I was crazy. You just better get walking, basically. So anyway, one day I was going to just teach my son a lesson. So I said, no, man, you're walking today. And he was like, what? I said, no, man, you're walking. I said, you missed your bus. I said, I'm not taking you to school anymore. And I'm thinking I did the right thing as a parent. I stuck my chest out and went, just went my bedroom or something like that. Next thing I know, this boy had called an Uber and got to school. So I'm thinking, kids today don't even understand what that lesson was all about. For him, it's like, okay, I'll just get on my phone and call a ride share or something.
Was it your credit card?
On my credit card. So Matt, to your point, yes, young people today have no idea what it was like. And I'm not talking about walking 5 miles in the snow and all that stuff, but if I miss my bus, I better jump on my bike, and my school was 5 miles away. And that's not that big a deal to do on the bike, but that I better get on my bike and start biking, and I better not miss school. Kids today would just play, I'm not going to school today, maybe go hang out somewhere else. That mentality didn't occur, at least in my house. My dad, he wouldn't have tolerated it. So I think we're too lenient now, and I'm not advocating spanking. Believe me, I think I'd probably get arrested now or something if I start talking about the spankings that I used to get, maybe the ones that you used to get. But my dad, I get in real, man, we called them whoopings back when I was a kid. They call child protection on you now. And I can remember once I was going to spank my son, and he says, well, I'm going to call child protection. I mean, we teach kids that now in school. I'm like, child protection? I said, who told you about that? Oh, they teach us that in school. You're not supposed to hit me as a parent. I'm like, wow. You just kind of, it's like you get taken back. You start thinking to yourself, wow, it's a whole different world. So, but anyway, I think we've created this problem, and this fear of this worldwide pandemic, I think, knocks everybody down a few pegs, and it kind of equalizes the playing field a little bit, makes all humanity realize that, hey, we're all kind of the same here. And, at some point, if this pandemic gets worse, let's just say, it will definitely show us all that, hey, your money doesn't help you at this point if you get sick. And if you have a loved one that's sick, you're going to have to deal with that, just like someone that could be poor that has a loved one that's sick. It's like, hey, we're all the same here. And I think we need some of that. And I think unfortunately, it's an unfortunate situation that has caused us all to take a pause in our busy lives to start to realize what's really important. And Matt, you mentioned faith. Faith is, without faith, there is nothing, and if we think, we're getting up every day by ourselves, all in our own power, and our heart keeps beating because we're just such a strong and good, or deserving individual, we have another thing coming because we're all just one heartbeat away from like not being here anymore. We all know people that aren't. That I'm 63, and I have a lot of people that I knew, wrestlers included, that are my age that are no longer here. People that are in poor health. So we don't know what's going to happen, and all we have is our Creator, our faith in our Creator, and our Creator put in us the desire to know Him, our Creator. I mean, it's just part of whether you get exposed to someone trying to teach you about faith and religion or not. There is a faith that's instilled in all of us because it's just how we were created, and I see it all the time. People that say they don't have faith in God, right when things get like impossible, they start having faith. And they may not say it's God, but they're having faith in something. They're having faith that things will get better. They're praying to that things will get better. They realize very quickly once you go through an illness that wow, maybe I didn't get over this all by myself. So one way or another, whether we believe in a creator or not, or we believe that you have to have faith or not, it still exists. And I think we all are going to be forced to face it at some point. When you look at a mere lifespan of 80 years or average 85, 90, if you're lucky, that's not that much time here on Earth. I'm 63 years old now. And, it's not pleasant to think about it, but most of my life is over. There's not a lot of extra stuff I'm going to be doing in the next 20 years, maybe, hopefully, if I have 20 years left. But so what else is there after this, after that? So it's personal, and we come into this world alone, and no matter how much money you have and how many friends you have and how many Twitter followers you have, you go out of this world alone too. So it's all very personal. Our relationship with God and our Creator is personal. It has to be. There's no other way it can be. We can fellowship with other people that are believers, but it's all personal. It's and I, not to try to make this analogy, but I think things in life like wrestling is personal. When you have to walk on that mat, it's by yourself. There's nobody that can go out there with you. Your coach who's telling you can do it. Maybe you were able to have great practices. You believe you can do it, but really, when it comes down to it, you really have to walk on that mat alone by yourself, and you have to make it happen. You have to believe in yourself, have confidence in yourself, and that's how we are with our personal relationship with God. It's personal. No one can do it. No one can have it for us. We have to have it on our own, because when we finally leave this world, we're going to be alone. Doesn't matter how many people are around our bedside, or if it's an immediate thing like an accident. It's I went through a car accident about 5 years ago. I fell asleep on the highway, driving highway speeds. I fell asleep, and cars don't run real good and drive real good when you're asleep going on the highway. So I hit another car, and I could have been killed easily. So talk about humbling experience. That was the first time I'd ever had anything totally out of control in my life like that. I think as a wrestler, I was successful because I was a control freak. I controlled almost every aspect of my training in my life. But when I finally woke up in that car as it was tumbling, and it finally came to a rest, and then my first thought was, I'm alive still. Because I knew at first I didn't even know what was happening, and then it's just like the movies, where cars tumbling, paper, everything in the car is being thrown around, glass flying. It was at night. It was on the highway. It was raining, and the car finally stops, and I'm hanging upside down with the seatbelt on, and I'm just realizing I got to get out of the seatbelt. I'm thinking the car's going to explode. It's going to catch on fire. So I'm trying to get out of the car, and the doors won't open because the car's upside down and it's all crumpled. And I kick the window out and come out the street, and there's people had already stopped, and it was just like a movie. If there were movie cameras there, they could have used that scene in a movie probably. But talk about humbling. It's like your life is done. You could have been over right there. If I didn't have my seatbelt on, I know I wouldn't survive that. So, of course, you live differently after that. You realize, life's not promised. Things just can happen in an instant. You change. So, felt like I was protected. I felt like I was protected. Wasn't really hurt. I had some scratches and bleeding and stuff like that, but it was, and then the paying it forward, just the people, the Good Samaritan type people that stopped. It just was overwhelming. The people that pulled over and stopped to come help me. It was amazing. Before the police came, before the ambulances come, there were people who stopped to help me. Are you okay? Help me to the side of the road, and like you're in shock. You're in shock. It was several people that helped me kind of get to the side of the road to sit down, and so humanity is the reason why the pandemics will never win. They'll never wipe out humanity, because I think the essence of humanity is from God. That's the pure essence of us being on this planet, is to live and to help others. But
Lee, I didn't know that part of your story with the cars. That's incredible. And I was in college at Trenton State College in New Jersey, D3, and I was driving home in the middle of the night from late work, and also fell asleep and hit a house, and had an accident like that. And I had another incident my junior year where I got hit by a car on a bike coming home from wrestling practice at night, and got tore up. So I feel you on that. It's surreal, but like you said, the role that it shows, kind of that faith in your life. I remember looking at the headlights of the car right as it was about to hit me, figuring I was dead, and just making my peace with God kind of pretty quickly, and saying, well, we've had a pretty good run. Like, this is your call. This is your call. I can no longer control my bike to move fast enough, and this is your control, not mine. And then when I wasn't dead, and then thought we'd be paralyzed in the ambulance, and then figuring, and I think, Matt, I mentioned this when we talked to the world team in the summer, but I remember thinking in the ambulance getting rushed away that I guess a college season's done, maybe I'm paralyzed, and started laughing, and they thought I was delirious in the ambulance, and they're like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, well, because I should have been dead. Like, this is actually great. I'm so glad I'm alive. Like, this is, and I'm like, I guess I'll never wrestle again, but I'm going to find some wheelchair sports and be like, an awesome, like, I'm going to learn to play basketball or something really good. And like, we're going to do something really good. And, it gives you that sense that, like, smallness of the impact of that sort of faith's protection and providence when you lose all that other control of what's going on. And so I wanted to ask you, from what you were saying then, you mentioned that, we talked about struggle today a lot, and how a lot of, and in the shows past, Matt and I, we've talked about, the kids, today they say, like, the struggle is real. And we say, well, that's because the struggle has to be real, because you can't have growth without moving outside your comfort zone, which means to struggle. And the word wrestle means to struggle. You know, when they say Jacob wrestled with the angel of God, it means he struggled with them. That's, if you're struggling with something, you're like, oh, I'm really wrestling with this problem. So wrestling's a great parallel and a great analogy, and I think a lot of people can take what we learn from wrestling and certainly have applied it to life. And so when you have situations like this, say the Olympics that have been delayed, and you gave some great advice for guys who might be going through that in terms of the sort of, you know, deeper ways to process that. But at like a athletic side, at a coaching side, what do you say to these guys who might feel like they just lost it, where you guys really lost it in 80? There wasn't a delay. There wasn't a, hey, it'll come around next year. What do you tell them in terms of looking at the positives of taking advantage of this opportunity that they've now been gifted?
I'll put it into a wrestling analogy. You could have the goal of winning the nationals or whatever big tournament that you're in, and you get beat. So now you're in the wrestlebacks. Okay, so now you have a couple choices when you're in the wrestleback. You can't take first, but you have to reset some different goals. So now maybe you want to take third. So now maybe you win your first wrestleback match, but you lose your next one. So now maybe you can take fifth now. So the point I'm making is, at each point in time, I've watched athletes, in using this wrestling analogy, be proud as they possibly could be just to get on that award stand. They're as proud to be fifth, sixth, seventh, or whatever as the guy who's standing up there to be number one. So in that analogy, in that situation that you just described, you just give it your best effort as long as you can. And then at that point in time, if you didn't get what you want, sure, there's going to be some disappointment there. I mean, we're all human. But there comes a point where you have to stop feeling sorry for yourself. I come from the old school where my mom and dad would have let me mope around for any disappointment, whether it's school or wrestling or whatever. But yeah, disappointment is a disappointment. We're all human. But one thing I will say, though, knowing that you gave it your best effort is really, well, first of all, it's all that you can do. First of all, that's the only thing that you can do. But if you've done that, that is pretty satisfying. And this, I don't want this to sound arrogant or anything like that, but I remember I'd won 2 world titles, so my 3rd world championship, I got beat in semis. So it's like I can't take first now. And I can remember going through my mind how thinking, taking third doesn't mean anything, And it was my mother who slapped some sense into me, not literally, physically or literally, but she talked to me, and I called her. It's funny how you call your mom. I called my mom from Yugoslavia. I don't even know what the time difference was. I just called home. And my parents were so used to me calling home to tell them I had won. And, they knew I was at the world championship. So I told, honey, you won. Great. I said, Mom, I didn't win. I got beat. She goes, oh, you got beat. Really? She was like shocked. That hurt my feelings. It's like, oh, man, that's great now. And then there was a big pause there. And she says, well, are you still in the tournament? I mean, can you still play? And I said, oh, well, my third doesn't really mean anything now. I mean, I'm thinking I'm a champion, man. Third doesn't mean anything. And I was real quiet. She said, well, can't you take third, or are you out? If you get beat, are you out? No, I said, I have another match, but that match doesn't really mean anything. She goes, what do you mean it doesn't mean anything? And she says, are you mean to say you're not going to give that your best effort? And man, it was like a mother she was scolding me. I was like, oh, man. Because you better get your butt out there and get there. I'm like, okay. So I got off the phone with her, and my whole mind was changed. If I hadn't made a phone call with her, I might have chucked it all in and gotten beat, thinking it didn't matter. And we've all seen athletes do that. We've seen athletes that just go out and like, what happened? But we don't get on their case, but because we know how difficult it might have been to take that crushing, defeat early on, and now they just didn't have it from that point on. But I can remember the very first takedown against this Korean wrestler for the bronze medal. He took me down right away. Guess what? It meant a lot to him to get a bronze medal. And at that moment, it meant more to him than it meant to me. And I thought, holy crap, I'm going to get beat out here. And so I start wrestling. And I scrapped to beat that guy to get. And when I stood on that award stand to get my bronze medal, man, it wasn't what I actually wanted. But looking back now at 63 years old, I'm glad I got that bronze medal for my effort that year. I mean, it's not just that one tournament; it's the whole year of training, everything that you put into it. Like, so giving your all is what we need to teach people, and sports is one way to teach it. We used to learn that in school too, academically. Teachers, I think being a teacher is one of the toughest jobs there is, because you're trying to get students to just learn how to give their best. I went to school during a period of time when we would get a grade for effort. We'd get a gold star for effort, even though maybe we got a C. But if the teacher felt you put a lot into it, even though maybe you didn't have whatever it took to get the A, we were proud to get the effort. I remember we got graded on attendance. I had perfect attendance all through junior high school, or all through elementary school. I mean, think about it. As a kid, you get sick here and there, but my parents were from the old school, and if you got a little cold, you're going to school, I mean, you couldn't wake up sick and say, I'm sick, I don't want to go to school. Nowadays, parents let their kids have time off, but I had perfect attendance all through elementary school. Why? Because that's just how life was back then. Like, I never missed work. I never missed practice. I can't remember ever missing anything, even if I was sick. So effort is important to teach, as well as winning. I mean, winning is important, of course. It's like that quote. I can't think of who said it now, but it's like, it's okay to accept losses. It's okay to be a gracious loser. It's okay. Give your best effort. But you know what? Don't lose. So there's some coaches that preach that. That's not what I'm saying that's right, but I'm saying that winning is important. There's a certain amount of importance that you have to put on trying to win, trying to do whatever you can do in that moment to win. But if you don't win, hey, that's not what life's all about, really. To make the point even clearer, there are some athletes I know that they don't seem like they're trying to win, really. It's like Gable when he made that comment about me that, Lee, you were actually trying to beat me. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? So it's like when you're doing your job, like if you have your job, you're working for someone, aren't you supposed to give your best effort at your job? Give your A game when you're at work. You're not there to loaf. You're there to win in the way that you can win. In the things that you're being asked to do, you're supposed to give your best effort. So that's what I mean by winning. You are to put a winning effort in. You are to train yourself to try to win, but know that winning is not the most important thing. I think it's a fine line there. I think we put too much effort on or emphasis on winning, where people will even cheat to win. Just to win by cheating is not right. It's not what I'm talking about at all. It's that sometimes we don't teach people how to win and how to try to win and how to frame their thinking so that they can win. I think a lot of people, when they lose, they sabotage their own thinking. They feel like they don't deserve to win, maybe, or whatever it is. I mean, as a coach, you see it. You see an athlete, you look in their eyes, you can tell, they're just not there. They're not going to win this match, And you try to pump them up, but you can tell when you watch them compete, you can tell they just didn't. And so for me, it's like you shortchange yourself. Something worse than seeing someone defeat themselves is, I think, what I'm trying to say. There's nothing wrong with trying to win. There's nothing wrong with trying to be the absolute best that you can be. But when the game is over, it's just a game,
So something that really popped out to me when you were speaking earlier, Lee, was you were talking about sort of that youthful approach to winning and wanting to beat Gable and taking it seriously, and you called it naivete, but like, yeah. I just see it as being a gamer. It's like you're in the mix, so take it real and get after it and take yourself seriously. You believed in yourself. And so with everything you just said about that and that earlier story of it, we see, the Greco team is relatively young. A lot of the guys went straight into the Greco program. They didn't always have the same collegiate background that a lot of the freestyle side has. And so they don't always, in college, you can learn a certain, you kind of learn that granularity of leadership structure, but also good followership too, being a team member. And so we have a lot of young guys who won junior world championships or, some the best in the world. They're not even allowed to drink alcohol yet, They're really, really good stars. And like, what can they take from that mindset that you were talking about? What can they take from what you did at about the same age and say, like, yeah, I can go out against the very best guys, grown men in their 30s in Greco, and not be naive and actually just legitimately go out and beat them with the championship mindset, as opposed to thinking, oh, I need to develop or this or that, or believing what society tells you that there's this hierarchy, when the hierarchy doesn't exist, when it's just you and another person on a mat.
Well, the first thing is you've got to make sure you're prepared. And the biggest thing I see, the biggest problem I see is people will have these big goals, big dreams, which is fine. They'll be naive enough to think they can do these big, grandiose things. But they don't prepare themselves. Now, in the context of wrestling, okay, you've got to be in great shape. And that's one thing that Dan Gable taught all of us when we were young, is to be the best conditioned athlete on the mat. If you are competing in wrestling, in the wrestling context where someone's stronger than you, well, okay, you've got to just get in the right room and get stronger. And I tell athletes all the time, who controls what kind of condition you could be in? Who should you do that? Who controls how strong you can be? You control that. So if you cover those two bases, that gets you pretty far down the road. Now, if you're getting beat because someone has better technique than you, then you got to learn more. It's almost like if you want to go to medical school, you're going to have to learn some things that you don't know right now. So if you want to be a good wrestler, you're going to have to learn some things that you don't know right today. If you're getting beat by a certain technique, you got to learn how to, like I got to learn to beat Dave Schultz's leg lace. I didn't beat it, and he beat me, right? Now, if I was going to continue to wrestle, I would have had to learn how to get good enough to beat Dave Schultz's leg lace. And then he was going to have to get good enough to stop my single leg. And it just goes on and on and on and on from there. So having that high expectation is one thing. But if you don't prepare yourself, then it's really I don't want to be real negative about that, but the person's just not, it just doesn't make any sense really. So as a person of authority and leadership and mentorship, and when you see that, that's one of the toughest things to do, is to tell someone that seems to have a lot of enthusiasm, but that there's a lot of pieces missing. So you're trying to whatever finesse you can to make them understand that they've got to do these other things before their dream could really make sense, is difficult. It's a real skillful job of a coach to do that. But that's really the whole basis of it, I think. And that's why all the hard work, and we talked about all that, all those pieces I put together because Dan helped show all of us when we were following him at the time. And even there's current stars now, current people that I'm sure wrestlers are looking up to. They see all the hard work and they see all the different things they're doing, but then the learning technique, and that's where back, in my day, there wasn't as many opportunities to go overseas to wrestle, to learn the European style of wrestling and all that, which is, I think, is one of the things that's helped our Greco-Roman wrestlers today, the ability to do all the traveling. But that's not easy. I mean, you think all the time you're not at home and the coach. It's one thing going as a young athlete, it's all new, it's fun, you're traveling, but as a coach, those trips, man, it's got to be hard. It's got to be hard to continually be the leader of a team, exposing the team to this high-level competition so they experience it. They learn how to they learn how to get on that level because they're in it all the time. It's all those pieces have to be present at the same time for the great success to happen. But since you control your mind, why not think the best you can in terms of your success? Why not say, I'm going out here to win this match? By the way, Larry Owings beat Gable when he was only a sophomore in college. So theoretically, was Larry Owings actually better than Dan Gable? If they would have wrestled another match an hour later, it would have been probably a different match. Dan would have been, because I saw sparks in that match where Dan showed that he was capable of winning that match. I mean, he had 2 minutes of riding time even in that match. So he was dominating certain aspects of the match. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to win, even though maybe you might not have all the pieces in place. So there's no reason to discourage someone, because you could be Larry Owings as a sophomore with not as much experience as Dan Gable, and he still won the match. You could be Lee Kemp with not as much experience as Dan Gable, and I still won the match. Or not, my first world tournament that I won, I wasn't as experienced as the Russian at all. I mean, when I was wrestling the Russian, I could tell he had way more experience than me. But Dan told me a couple things going into the match. Not right before the match, but at the training camp. He said, Lee, don't worry about learning freestyle right now. You're probably one of the best guys in the world at just getting 1 point takedown. So just single leg guys and take them down. That's all you have to do. And when you're in the bottom, we worked a lot on the parterre position and not getting turned. And I didn't have one turn in the whole world tournament. And it was only 1 point takedowns back then, but still, I was losing 4-0 and then ended up beating the Russian for 2 reasons. One, because I was in better shape than him. And I can give credit to my coach, Dan Gable, who put us through training that put us all at a level of conditioning that allowed us, if that situation presented itself, then we could prevail. And I can remember many instances in the national tournament where one of the Hawkeye wrestlers won because of conditioning. Well, in the situation of the World Championships, I beat the Russian because my conditioning prevailed in the third period. There were 9-minute matches back then, three-minute matches. So I just outlasted this Russian by my conditioning, and I was pretty strong. And that's one thing Dan always said about me is that, Lee, you're so strong that it's hard for someone to move you where you don't want to go. So I was able to do that. My conditioning was at a high level. I understood position really well, and I was really strong to go along with that positioning, so my opponents couldn't really attack me very well. So I was always able to win a match, even though I may not have had the same experience level as the Russian or as Gable or as some of the state semifinals my junior in high school. I was always able to win a match. And think about the times that you wrestled someone that was really strong. That always gets your attention. It always does. You have to respect someone that has a lot of strength, and I certainly had a lot of strength. I had a lot of conditioning. So those two things gave me the foundation to win any match, regardless of my skill level compared to my opponent.
Great stuff. Lee, it's been a true honor and a pleasure to chat with you and just have you share this stuff with the world and especially with our team, because that's really who we developed this show for, was just to give these kind of lessons to our upcoming athletes and, like you said, give back. So it's been a true pleasure. Anything else before I let you go? I kept you a little over an hour and a half here, so I just want to thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was an honor actually to be on the podcast. You know what? If I was a younger wrestler, obviously to be well-rounded today, you'd have to know both styles. And obviously you have one that you're better than the other. But I would have welcomed the opportunity to learn. I mean, just to be a freestyler, to go through a Greco practice. I'm glad it I didn't have the opportunity. I'll just say that way, because that is a tough sport, boy. Because I had a chance to work with Uriah Faber a little bit at Team Alpha Male, and to see what those athletes go through, man, it is crazy. Just the whole idea of competing against someone that's actually trying to, I wouldn't say the word hurt you, because that's an understatement, to try to hurt you. No, they're trying to kill you, actually. That's a whole different mind. It's war. You have to be mentally capable of being in war, be a UFC fighter at a high level, because I think it's the ultimate challenge. The name fits it pretty well. That's awesome to me, really, to hear that, because that just tells me that the wrestlers make up the core of most of the UFC fighters in my mind. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think
I
some
know
of
a
the
lot.
best ones.